Good morning and welcome to the Veterans Forum. I'm Bob Stevens. I'll be hosting the program again. Today we have a rather special guest. All the other guys have been pretty good too, but this is a little bit different. I'd like you to take close attention. Don Shedd is our veteran. We'll start the show by having him introduce himself. Don, your name please, and spell your last name, just for the record.
Donald G. Shedd, S-H-E-D-D.
Okay. And what are your dates of service, your branch of the Army? So
I was in the U.S. Army in Europe in the 42nd Rainbow Division. And I was in there for just a little under 2 years.
Oh, good.
In combat infantry, mainly.
Okay.
I was the first scout.
We'll get to that. That's
Okay.
important. All right. Now, today is the 31st of October, 2007. We're here at the studios of Pittsfield Community Television, where all these shows are taking place. We'll sit back a bit to build a little history, if you will. Where and when were you born? Do you have any brothers and sisters? What was your life like growing up before the service?
I was born July 16th, 1926 in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. I have two wonderful parents, and I've always been a member of Pittsfield. And I had a nice childhood. It was during the Depression, but we still had a nice life. My father was in the plumbing and heating business, and it was kind of rough during the Depression. And then at the end of my schooling, I was in Pittsfield High School. And should I get into getting into the service now? Or
Yep, whatever makes you comfortable.
All right. In 1944, in the spring of 1944, in Pittsfield High, a whole bunch of us boys went to Springfield, Mass. To enlist in the Navy. That was our first choice. So we went down and on a bus. I passed the physical, but I flunked the color test. I failed 29 out of the 31 different times. I can't tell brown from green, shades of gray. I can't tell blue from purple. So I knew I was going to be drafted. So I enlisted in the Army. And they said, what's your first choice? And I said, Armor Division, because during the war I saw all these tank battles between Patton and Rommel. So that was my first choice in the Army. Well, I turned 18 on July 16th, and I was in the service exactly 1 week later at Fort Devens, Mass. Spent a couple weeks there. And then we went on a train all the way down to Fort McClellan, Alabama, where I had spent 16 weeks of an intensive infantry training. Should I keep going?
Go ahead.
All right.
This is your story.
Keep going. All right.
Yep.
We had it was terrific. I mean, it was a hard 16 weeks, I'll tell you, but we learned a lot. And then after 2 hours of 2 weeks of intensive training at the end, we were given a delay en route to come home for 10 days. And so we left. It took us quite a while to get home because all the railroads are all full of the, they were full of
Troop movements and all that?
Troop movements, yes, going to the different ports. So it took a long time getting up. But I got home exactly December 16th. That's the day that the Battle of the Bulge started. Yeah. And I was home with my two nice parents and my future wife, my girlfriend that I met at a girls' club dance in high school. She was the only girlfriend I ever had.
Oh.
And then my father drove me down to New York City on December 26th, and I went down, and we went down to Fort Meade. And then from there, we were shipped up to Boston, Massachusetts. We boarded a crummy Liberty ship called the Sea Tiger, and we were in a 66-ship convoy heading for Le Havre, France. And in that ship, we were stacked 5 high in the hold of the ship.
Were your berthings your bunks, yeah.
And bunk. And then when we had meals, we had to stand up and have big trays, and there were big, long tables. And midway, we were followed by a wolf pack all the way over, a German wolf pack. Those are submarines. And you could hear depth charges going off and so forth all night long. And midway over, we had a mid-Atlantic storm, which was like a hurricane. And that Liberty ship went up and down, up and down. And I'm not going to go into details of bad things, but a lot of them just felt ill, and they left their trays on the table, and the ship would sway, and all the food on these trays would slam up against the walls and splatter food all over us. Well, I wasn't really ill at all, but we couldn't go out on the decks at all. But we peeked out of a window one day, and there was like a DE, which is a destroyer escort, right beside us. A little thing, it was popping up and down, and some sailors had to get on the deck for some reason or other, and we saw a huge wave and washed them right off the deck, the poor fellows.
Washed them right off?
Right off the deck.
Ooh.
So finally, the storm settled down after a couple of days, and we could go out on the deck a little bit. It was cold. It was a terrible winter. And we landed at Le Havre, France. Oh, cold. It was one of the coldest winters in decades in France. And we had our duffel bags, and we got off the ship. It was in the middle of the night, all dark, because the German Luftwaffe was still around there. And we walked down these streets and slipped on the ice and fell down, and oh, we were tired, we were cold. And finally, we got down to the railroad where we were going to get on some 40 and 8s. Mm-hmm. Those are freight cars that held either 40 men or 8 horses. And just before we got on, there was the Salvation Army giving out cocoa and coffee and muffins and cookies. And oh, what a delight that was.
Yeah.
And we got on these 40 and 8s, and we went to just north of Paris to the Battle of the Bulge, which is being fought in Alsace-Lorraine. We're on those for 4 or 5 days. Cold. We had a little pot we could make a fire and to keep heated. We had poor food. We didn't have any bathrooms. Oh, it was terrible. So we finally got near Théon, France, and Syrie, France, and we joined. Is it right for me to keep going?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we joined the Rainbow Infantry Division. That was MacArthur's army during World War I. And when we got there, it was only a task force. And again, the Rainbow landed at Marseille, France on December 16th. And it was only a task force. They didn't have any armor or artillery support, and they were shipped up fast.
Wow.
In the southern part of the Battle of Bulge. The French First Army was on the south, and Patton's Third Army was on the north of us. And the Germans found out that this was not a full division. So, after the Ardennes and everything else, they started to come down. They slammed through and really messed up the Rainbow Task Force. And the company, I joined C Company, Charlie Company. When I joined, it only had 23 men left out of 186. B Company next door, Baker Company, only had 9 men left. And the infantry was fighting tanks and artillery. And to make a long story short, that 1st Battalion, pardon me, of the 242nd Infantry Division, that was our regiment, they were awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for being so courageous. And finally, the Battle of the Bulge ended toward the end of January. The Americans were exhausted. The Germans were exhausted. Everybody was out of gasoline. They're out of ammo, out of food. It was terrible. So the Germans were reorganizing, and we started to reorganize. So then we went into basic training again in different parts of, pardon me, Alsace-Lorraine. And we had maneuvers out in the woods and in the fields, and there was a lot of snow Oh, it was terrible. And we had these boots on and so forth. A lot of fellows had trench foot and
Frostbite.
frostbite. So we had a lot of training. And the Germans were training too.
Training to do what?
Well, to make a long story short, coming up,
Go ahead.
I'll tell about what we were training for.
Okay.
In just a minute. So we got all our training, Amelia-Court and Hatton and Haguenau, all those areas in Alsace-Lorraine. And then from there, we went to the Lapite Forest for 2 weeks, not too far from the front line, still in France. We could hear a lot of shooting going on, a lot of bombers going over at daytime. The Americans, of course, bombed in the daytime, and the British bombed at nighttime. And so then we lived in foxholes, and then we were transported up to Wingen, W-I-N-G-E-N, and in France, and we could look across. There's a big, deep valley. On any other side, we could see the Germans for the first, for the first time in over a month. And it was fairly quiet. This is like around March 12th or 13th. And we could still see planes going over and so forth, but there wasn't much artillery or fighting going on in that area. And then we didn't have too many maneuvers. We were in foxholes. And then we were told that the whole Allied army, the British, the Americans, the French, and even the Russians on the East Front, were going to push off on March 15th for the last large offensive of the war. And so we were all, a lot of us had Bibles, little pocket Bibles, and we did a lot of praying and everything else.
Good deal.
And we trusted in God, and we went over the 23rd and 91st Psalm a lot with all my buddies. And then the night before we were going to push off, we got, my buddy went up to get his food. He had to go up the hill and over the top because the company kitchen was way behind the line. And he came back with his little, with his supper. And I was praying all this time, praying. So then, and my father, in all his letters that we received, and my nice letters from my mother and my future, my girlfriend, my future wife, he insisted, he put in the letters, love your enemy. He was very explicit about love your enemy. Of course, I was taught that in my Sunday school, too.
Okay.
And so I was praying in the foxhole when my buddy came back. He said, go ahead, hurry up and get their food because they're running out of food. And I said, well, something tells me to wait here a few minutes. And all of a sudden, all this shelling came in. And if I had gotten out of my foxhole and went up that path, I would have been killed. Because I looked up and one of our top sergeants just got out of his foxhole, pardon me, and a shell landed and down he went. He wasn't killed, but it was the last time we saw him because he had his leg wounded badly. So then the shelling ended before sunset, and then the next day we pushed off because the Americans started shelling the Germans then. Oh, shell. Because they'd be shelling ahead of us and we'd be walking and the shells would be going over our heads
Breathing
and
fire,
landing. Yeah. So then we captured quite a few towns. But then most of the fighting was in the valleys. And finally we got to the Hart Mountains. And we were taken way up to the top to clean out the Germans. And like I said, most of the fighting was in the valleys. Mm-hmm. And sometimes at night we'd be quiet and everything, and we could hear some rustling going by, and there'd be Germans. They were lost. They were going back and forth. There wasn't any shooting, but But then when we did go down to the valleys, we could see a lot of, buildings damaged and trucks, and tanks blowing up, and people,
Just a mess.
Just a mess. So we're happy to be in the mountains. So then, finally, we were going to get to the Siegfried Line. Again, we're in the mountains. And they said, we're going to attack it tomorrow. And it was all full of Germans. We could see their guns and artillery and everything else. but still there's a lot of fighting going on in the valleys. And we said, and then we were way back in the woods, but there was a big open area leading up to the Siegfried Line. And if we went off, I was made a first scout lots of times because I could spot the enemy camouflage. Nobody else could.
Tell them about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Because I don't know why I could, but I could spot different things that belonged to the enemy, and nobody else believed me.
Because of your color blindness?
Yeah, because of my color blindness. So we were going to push off the next morning, and we had a big cleared area. Wasn't no trees at all around to get up to the Siegfried Line where all the Germans were. So all that night, all of us prayed with our Bibles that we'd be safe and God was our shepherd and He'd guide us and we'd be protected. And when we pushed off in the morning, we started going through this open plain. No Germans. They were all pulled out during the night. We found out later and put into the valleys, and we entered the Siegfried Line without getting a shot at us. No one was killed in our outfit.
Beautiful.
So after that, could I still keep going? Am I running out of time?
Go, don't. We'll tell you.
Well, after that, we captured quite a few cities and towns, and then we headed for the that was the Alsace-Lorraine. That was one of our battle areas. The next battle area was the Rhineland, and we're getting ready to cross the Rhine River, and we did cross on April 1st, which was Easter Sunday, and we got into the valley. Of course, then there wasn't any more snow, and it was starting to warm up. But you should have seen that valley. The Rhine Valley is full of dust from all the bombing and shelling. It was hard to breathe. Dust, and all over the place, and fog. So we crossed the river at Worms, which is W-O-R-M-S, on a pontoon bridge, because all the bridges were knocked out. And then we headed for Zellingen, which we took. And then our division captured Würzburg on the Main River, that's M-A-I-N. From there, we went to the ball-bearing city of Europe, which was Schweinfurt.
Oh, the raids.
And we captured that city. And in the very morning, again, I was made first scout. And at 2 a.m. in the morning, we were going to sneak up this hill and get ready to attack the village at dawn. And again, we heard this like a motorcycle coming along, and then we all hid down. And finally, he ran into us, and we captured the fellow, and it was a German major who was making, scouting the area. And we captured him, so he couldn't report it back to Schweinfurt. So then after that, we went into captured Schweinfurt, captured the city, and then we heard that President Roosevelt had passed on, so they had an honorary, session, about him passing on.
Memorial service.
Yeah. And we still had to be careful because, of course, the day before we hit Schweinfurt, the bombers bombed the whole city. It was practically all destroyed. And but we captured that city, and then from there we left and started heading south. And so finally, then we captured some other Gildersheim and a few other places. And then, am I running out of time?
No.
Not yet?
No. I'll let you know, Daddy.
Our next, and then again, I could spot various places where the enemy were, and they wouldn't believe us. And one time, when we captured some Wehrmacht, see, my fellows, we were all religious. We were all Catholics and Protestants, and there was a few Jewish fellows in it too. But we all stuck together. And we didn't rob the Wehrmacht of their rings and watches and kick them around and hit them. We didn't do that. We were all, most of us were 18 and 19-year-olds, and we were brought up in Sunday schools, and we were told to treat people correctly and love your enemy.
Okay.
So we didn't do that. So then lots of times when the Wehrmacht soldiers were being marched to the rear echelon, they'd hold their hands up and stop, and then we had an interpreter in our platoon, and they'd say up the road a ways, be awful careful. The SS are entrenched.
Oh, this is the Wehrmacht telling you people.
Yes.
Okay.
And they'd ambush us. So at first we didn't believe them too much. But then we'd go and then we'd split. We have part of our company go one way and part of another and surprise the enemy so there wouldn't be any killing of the Germans and there wouldn't be any killing of us. And this happened many, many times. And so finally, the next big stop was going to be Nuremberg that our division was going to take. And the Wehrmacht, when they heard that, they said, that's the holy city of the Nazis. He said, all the civilians in that city, most of them are women, young kids and older men. All the men from 14 or 15 to 50 or 60 were gone. They were in the army or captured or whatever. And they said the SS had machine guns and they had them aimed at the backs of the civilians to protect the city to the last man. And Hitler ordered not to surrender that city. So our company was assigned to capture the city of Furth, F-U-R-T-H, which is just northwest of Nuremberg, just a little bit. And they said the next day, pardon me, we would not have in the morning any artillery or tank support at all in going after Furth. So we slept in our little foxholes, got up early, and we started out at 7:30 in the morning. Again, we all prayed. I don't mean to keep repeating it, but it paid to pray.
It paid off.
So then we entered this huge, tremendous field. And like I said, we didn't have any artillery or tank support that day. Huge field, you know, freshly plowed and just recently plowed. So they made me first scout again. So we went up this hill and went over the ridge, and I started to go down. I kept praying and praying, and something told me to stop. Stop. So I did stop. And I looked on the left oblique and the right oblique, and there was something suspicious. There was a town ahead of us, and after that was the city of Furth. So we stopped, and I came back over the hill, the ridge, and I reported it to our lieutenant and our captain, Captain Duffy. And they got their field glasses out and came over the ridge and looked around. Oh, there's nothing down there at all. We've got to get going. We got to
push.
We got to push toward Nuremberg. He said, we can't delay like this. And I said, well, there's something down there. Baloney. So I went over the ridge and headed down. I was praying and praying and praying. And then right then, all these machine guns opened up. Oh, my.
From either side.
Oh, terrific. Bullets all over the place. I just flopped into a furrow, you know. Mm-hmm. I didn't jump in. I just fell in it. And I could feel the bullets just above my head, over my helmet. And I had to get my head down further, so I had to dig further with my nose and chin to get down. And I prayed and prayed and prayed. And I was there for 3.5 hours, from 7:30 to 11.
Just pinned down?
Pinned down.
Oof.
And I prayed about my company. I didn't know, you know, who got hit or hurt or what. But what happened, I went over the ridge. My second scout behind me had made it just about to the top. Then, of course, behind him was the full company. And if the Germans had held off for another 5 or 10 minutes, but they should have done, they would have wiped out the whole company. The whole company would have been wiped out. But thank God, none of them were killed that morning or injured. And later on, the captain came up to me, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, and he held my hand, and he said, "Thank you for your protection." And I said, "It wasn't me, Captain, it was God. It was definitely God." And after that, we captured Furth, and then we surrounded Nuremberg, and we didn't want to kill all the civilians at the gates and everything. So then our reconnaissance spotted the machine gunners, who were all SS. And finally, they brought in mortars and so forth to try to hit the machine gunners where they were located. We hope they were located, and because we're getting ready for a big push-off. And finally, after half an hour or so of that, we heard all this commotion in Nuremberg, and we didn't know what was going on. We weren't doing any shooting. We heard all this shooting going on, and finally, later on, not too long, the civilians opened up the gates, and they were waving their white flags, and we entered Nuremberg. And most of them had killed all the SS machine gunners.
Ooh, they turned on them, huh?
They turned on them. And they were in the streets praying and all crying. And when we entered, they squeezed our hands, and they said, "You aren't conquerors, you're liberators."
Beautiful.
And of course, a lot of them had lost a lot of their family in the war, but they still were happy to see us come. Should I still keep on going?
Yeah, yes.
So after Nuremberg, and lots of times we didn't sleep in foxholes, we slept in farmhouses. We never saw a dirty home. We never saw a cockroach. And the only thing we ever stole from the Germans
Stole or borrowed?
Well, we stole. Was food in their basements. They had like bottled fruit and sauerkraut, because all we had for food were D bars and K rations. We never had any C rations. You know, it was just, and lots of times we didn't have any food at all, so we had to eat German food. And lots of times they'd be frying eggs, you know, and then we get ready to eat some eggs. Then they say, "Okay, we got to push off." So off we go, and so I never saw a dirty German home. I never saw, you know, bugs or cockroaches, anything like that. And a lot of the Germans squealed on the SS all over the place. So then we bypassed Augsburg, and then we headed for Munich. And we were in the southwest section, thank goodness. Other regiments were in the northwest, and one of them opened up Dachau, the concentration camp. And they were the first Americans to open up Dachau and liberate the prisoners there. So we finally, to make a long story short, we were with the chief division that captured Munich, and we got a little snow that day, not too much. And then we're heading for, we knew the war was coming almost to an end, because the Germans are surrendering by the thousands, not by the hundreds, by the thousands. And of course, Hitler committed suicide on April 30th, excuse me. So then we headed for Rosenheim, and then we went down to a beautiful big lake called Chiemsee, which means Chiem, See means lake. And we stayed at we came to this town called Seabrook. It's a beautiful town. It wasn't damaged at all during the war. So we were told because we could hear some snipers going in the woods and so forth and around. Yeah. We still had to check.
Be careful.
We had to be careful for snipers. So big houses, we'd have two fellows in the first floor and basement, and two other fellows to go up on the second floor and third floor, because if we didn't have anybody downstairs, the snipers would sneak down the stairs and get out of the house. So the fellow and I went up, this buddy of mine and myself, we went up on the second floor, and we searched the whole thing. We saw this beautiful big master bedroom, and we looked out and we could see the lake. And then we went up in the attic and checked everything, no snipers. Then on the way down, I was praying that we weren't out in the woods, because we could hear some shooting going on, quite a lot of shooting out in the woods nearby. And I said, something tells me to go in this master bedroom again and check it over. He said, whoa, and my buddy said, oh, heaven's sakes, we've already been in there.
Yeah.
But I said, something tells me to check it one more time. Then he heard all this shooting going on. He says, yes, okay, let's go in the bedroom. It's better there than out in the woods. So we went in, we checked everything. Then there was this big, huge bureau with 2 big, huge drawers. And he opened up one. We had a lot of jewelry and so forth. And mine had all the socks and handkerchiefs. And again, to get back to the, I should have said this before, but when we entered the house, the fellow that was in charge, he had lederhosen on. He was dressed. He had a Bavarian hat on, and he said he was a merchant from Munich, and he got out of Munich because on account of the shelling and bombing, and this was a summer home. He said, I just had to leave it. And he said he was a merchant. So in this, when we were going through the drawers up in this bureau, I said to my buddy, my gosh, the outside height of the drawers are the same, but your drawer is twice as deep as mine. So I took the things out, the handkerchiefs and socks and so forth, opened, and then we found I could open up the bottom of the drawer.
False bottom?
And in there were hundreds and hundreds of pictures of this fellow downstairs with Hitler. He showed him at the Nuremberg, marches they used to have, the big Nazi marches in Nuremberg, and sitting with Hitler. And I said, that fella that's a picture of him downstairs. He must have been a close friend of Hitler's. And my friend said, my gosh, it is.
Wow.
And then finally, my buddy found a ring in his drawer that was from Heinrich Himmler. He was the head of the Gestapo and the SS. So I said, I took some pictures. I said, I'm going down, talk to Captain Duffy. I could see him down in the street down below and just tell him who I found. So I said to my buddy, he said, go down and see my other 2 buddies down the first floor, but don't say anything. So I went out and I showed him to Captain Duffy. He said, you sure that's him? I said, absolutely. He said, arrest him, go up and arrest him. So I went up and approached him, and I said, he could speak a little English. I said, you're under arrest. And I showed him the picture, and he didn't deny it. He wasn't mad or upset. And his name, I didn't know who it was then, but later on I found out his name was Julius Schaub. And he was the chief adjutant of Adolf Hitler for 16 years.
Wow.
And I was allowed to keep some of those pictures, and I have them today. And in fact,
show them this. I think that ties right in with it very quickly.
Yep. Who should I aim it to?
Oh, right there. That's as
Right
good
there.
as any.
Can you see it all right? There's Adolf Hitler here, and in the center is Julius Schreck. He was his chauffeur, and over here is Julius Schaub, the chief adjutant, the one I captured. And this is a blow-up of the original picture I took out of that drawer. All right? Thank you.
He didn't give you any objection or made any excuses?
No, he didn't.
He just finally recognized that this was it.
Yeah. Could I still tell one more story?
Absolutely.
I should have told this before while I was in it. After we'd captured Würzburg, in 2 or 3 days, it was pretty well destroyed. But then we knew we were going to be heading for Schweinfurt. Well, my buddy found a Leica camera in a Nazi office. He didn't steal it from any civilian, but it was in a Nazi office, and it had film in it, a Leica camera. And then we knew that evening we were going to push off and head toward Gildesheim and then Schweinfurt. And he said, look, go out in the backyard. He found a German uniform in the house with a hat. And he said, put this on and sit in this chair, and I'm going to take a picture of you with my camera. So I took a picture of him first, and then I sat down in this chair, and he said, put your hand like Napoleon.
Yeah.
And I had a monocle and the hat and the suit on, and he took a couple of pictures of me, and all of a sudden, a shot here, a shot there, and we ran into this under the garage under the house, and we ran in there, and we looked up on the street up above, and there's Baker Company. shooting
They're
at me.
nailing you.
Shooting at me. And we yelled up and we said, hey, hey.
Show them that picture.
So-
This is absolutely unbelievable.
Can you see it all right with the plastic on it? You want me to take it out?
No, that's fine.
That's me, and there's a blow up of it. Can you see it all right?
Look at a card-carrying
And
Nazi.
of course, we started buddy reunions in 1985 for 22 years. We went to Europe twice with our gang. And a couple of times my captain came, Captain Duffy, who was the head of our company. And I showed him this picture, and he said he never saw it before, this picture here. And he said, you did that in combat? He said, that's a stupid thing to do.
Yeah, but you're a target.
So I thought I'd just show that too.
Yeah,
So
that is. Those two are.
But I'm glad my
Amazing.
buddy took it because I've kept them all this time.
Yeah.
Of course, he couldn't get it developed until the war was over in Salzburg. But he took the
You
picture.
got them, okay.
Yeah.
Now, how about showing that where that picture in that book there, that Adolf?
Yes, my son-in-law, who was a history buff like I am, he found this book in a bookstore. It says Hitler, Memoirs of a Confidant, and there's the same picture up here, of the original one I had that I showed you before of Julius Schaub.
That's amazing.
So he found it in this book, and he got me this book and gave it to me. Yeah.
She had kind of a little busy time there. Okay, now
Yeah.
after this is over, where were you at the end of the war?
Okay. Does I still have time to talk?
I'll let you know when, Daddy.
Well, okay. We were in the Army of Occupation in southern Germany. And then we were in Austria. And a lot of the SS had retreated, of course Hitler called it a redoubt, into Austria Alps and the Bavarian Alps. But the people used to squeal on them, and they didn't want them around. So they used to tell us where they were hiding, in the barns and in the fields and things
Good,
like that.
okay.
So again, we used to capture a lot of the SS and Gestapo without shooting them, and or they were shooting us,
Bloodless.
because the people didn't want any more war or fighting going on. And we were in Hallein for a while at a big concentration camp where a lot of Germans were. And but then they opened up in Zell am See, Austria, a university called Rainbow University, and I was the first one out of 450 men to go there for a couple of months to college, which was excellent. And then I was told when I was in college there, a lot of fellows were in the headquarters company of the Rainbow Division, and they said, you should come and join the headquarters. Of course, I was in the combat company, and I said, I hate to leave all my buddies, but then I found out a lot of my buddies were getting jobs in Salzburg, because Hallein, where we were in the concentration camp, was just outside of. So I joined the headquarters, and I went to movies, and they had a Red Cross club there with free food, and we went to operas and operettas and concerts. And then my buddies and I, we used to get together and go down to, they had the Army had a place called on Koenigsee, that means King's Lake, right near Berchtesgaden. And we could go down and have something to eat, and you could go swimming if you wanted to, but it was too cold to go swimming.
Cold.
Oh, the water, it was a deep lake, and of course it was all fed by glaciers and everything. But we used to go down there and have picnics and everything else, and boat rides on the lake. And the guy used to blow a bugle. You could hear all the echoing all over the place. Oh, it was a beautiful spot.
Did you ever get up to Berchtesgaden, up the Eagle's
Oh,
Nest?
absolutely. We've been there quite a few times.
What was it like?
Wonderful.
That's a good word, but
Yeah.
I mean, what was it like
We
physically?
saw Hitler's house
Okay.
before they destroyed it, but then we went up to Eagle's Nest. Oh, what a view up there of the Bavarian and Austrian Alps, and you could see Koenigsee down in the valley and the city of our town of Berchtesgaden. Wonderful.
Now, how'd you get up? Did you have to go a gondola or
They had a
truck?
special road that was built
Okay, yeah.
by one of Hitler's great architects. I guess his name was Todt. I forgot his first name, T-O-D-T. In fact, he designed the Autobahn during the 30s. But he designed this road to go all the way up. Then there's an elevator partway at the top to get up to the Eagle's Nest. Yeah.
What was the insides like? Was it pretty well gutted, bombed out, or
The Eagle's
intact?
Nest?
Yeah.
No.
Everything
not.
was smooth?
Yeah, but Hitler's house was all damaged.
Okay.
We saw it. We couldn't go in it because it was all roped off because it was all damaged so severely. If somebody walked in there, they could be hurt or damaged.
Okay, you didn't need any
But they
grease.
blew it up after a while.
Oh, okay.
But we had a nice time in Austria, and then I got a week. I could go to either London, Paris, the French Riviera, or Switzerland. So I chose to go to Switzerland for over a week.
About R&R?
Yeah, well, yeah, it was a free trip, and we went to Basel and Lucerne and Bern. Then we went up to Wengen. Of course, the place we jumped off at March 15th was Wingen. That's W-I-N-G-E-N. This is Wengen, W-E-N-G-E-N, up in the Swiss Alps. Oh, it was nice. We went skiing up there.
Oh, I meant to ask you about that.
Yeah, and then we went up to, up at the all that whole area, and we were up there for a whole week. We stayed in a nice hotel with nice food, nice rooms. Yeah.
Now, with that hotel, I read someplace that one of the hotels up there was occupied or was first taken over by the Air Force, but then they had to, in effect, show that you were allies, and they let some of the other guys in,
Yes,
too, as far as the skiing and the good times.
Yeah, because it was right near Mount Eiger, and then we went up on a little cog railway up to Jungfraujoch. It's up 11,500 feet. And you could look over and see all the valleys and everything. And one time we were up there with our buddies. Of course, we were given free tickets so we could have food, our meals up there on this open deck. It was wonderful weather. And up there, nice and warm. But we could hear the glaciers, coming, falling in the valleys,
Wow.
But we were up there one day with 5 or 6 of my buddies from the division. Most of those buddies up there weren't from my company, but they were from the Rainbow on this trip that we took. And we saw this little group of people, and then finally this lady got up, and a couple of people with her, and they came over to us, and she wanted to thank us GIs for beating the Nazis.
Oh.
And she came over and hugged us and squeezed our hands, and it was Princess Beatrix of Holland.
Holland, yeah.
And eventually, of course, she became queen. But she wanted to thank us for what we did during the war, and we were so thankful. And then, of course, after that, I came back, and then we, pardon me, and then I left the end of June, and got home. We came home on another freighter called the Mexico Victory, and I was discharged at Camp Kilmer, and got home at the very end of June, just about 2 weeks before I turned 20. So I was in the Army just a little under 2 years, and got together with my future wife and my folks and all my family. And then when I got home, I said to my wife, we won't get married for at least a year. And she was an only child, and I was an only child. And I said, when we get married, we're going to have more than one child. We had 2 sons and 1 daughter.
Good.
And so we did get engaged. And then it was wonderful. And I started to work with my father. He was a plumber, and he was in the plumbing and heating business. And I became, after a while, a journeyman plumber and a master plumber. And we got married a year later, and it's been a wonderful. She had nice parents, a nice family, and we've had, and our family was nice, and And overall, I can thank God that not only me, but all my buddies came back.
Good.
That I knew, and very few of them ever got wounded or killed. And
That's the bottom line
so
sometimes, really.
that's my story.
Now, did you join the VFW, the Legion, or anything like that?
No,
or did you stay loose?
I could have, but I joined the Rainbow Veterans. I've been a
Okay.
member of that for years.
Okay, show them that.
Yeah, yeah. Here's my rainbow. Yeah, that's the rainbow symbol.
There you
And
go.
we've had buddy reunions going on 22 years. We've been to Europe twice with our wives and seen all the places that we were at. Nice trips. And most of the reunions were held, they were formed by one of my buddy and his wife in Georgia. We used to go to Jekyll Island, and we were at Cape Cod a couple of times. And we used to have like 36, 40 with our wives.
Wow.
And then, but it kept getting smaller and
Yeah.
smaller. So last year, I think it was the last reunion we had. Last year, 2006.
Wow. Now, your boys following you in the business, or are they doing their own thing?
My oldest son, Daryl, took over my business after I took it over from my father. He's running that in Pittsfield. My other son, Stephen, he's a professor at Principia College in Elsa, Illinois. Very active, and he's been very active in solar car racing and everything else. He's a busy man. And then my daughter lives in Rockville, Maryland, and she married a wonderful fellow and excellent son-in-law. And I have two nice grandsons down there in Rockville, and we visit her quite a lot. Yeah.
Aren't they great?
Oh, I have a nice family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 3 granddaughters and 2 grandsons.
Great.
Nice family. We've been just like that for years.
I was just thinking, though, just using dates, you crowded an awful lot of living in a couple of years down there.
Mm-hmm.
And more important, you're here to share it with us now. I'd like to take a few minutes, if you will, and run through your citations and your medals. Would you mind doing that? I'll even hold it, because I'm a good holder-upper. And you can tell us what they were, what they are, and is that fairly good, Jeff? I want to make real good shot. Okay.
Well, there's the combat infantry badge at the top. And then I was a expert rifleman. I never shot a gun in my life before I entered the Army. I used to shoot cap pistols at 4th of July, but when I got in the Army, we had rifle practice for 1 full week at Fort McClellan. I'm not bragging. I like to target practicing. And a lot of my buddies down there were farmers. They used to shoot deer and things like that. And in my whole company, I had the highest points as far as shooting goes. And that's the Presidential Unit Citation. And of course, there's the Army of Occupation, the European Theater, Good Conduct Medal. And then I got 2 Bronze Stars.
Explain those, if you will.
Well, one was at 4th, where I saved the company from getting slaughtered.
Over the hill, yeah.
And the other one, I guess, was when I captured and arrested Julia Schaub.
Wonderful.
And then this only shows two battle stars, but actually we were awarded 3, but I didn't want to take this whole thing apart. And that was Alsace-Lorraine, the Rhineland, and Central Germany. Mm-hmm. We had 3 battle stars. But
how about this guy right up here?
excuse me?
How about this fellow right here?
Oh, that's the Army of Occupation in Austria. That's an Austrian symbol, and that's the Rainbow Division patch.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Now,
But I was so happy to, because not to be in the Navy on account of that trip I had over on the Sea Tiger. And like I said, when we were heading for the Danube River near Donauworth, way back, we crossed the Danube River, I saw 13 American Sherman tanks knocked out in one afternoon.
Ooh.
So thank God I was never in the Navy, and I wasn't in the Armored Division, where I was my first choice when I joined the Army. So And I was glad to be in the infantry because we could see the people. I don't have any German in me. I'm all English. But we found out that the German people were so kind, polite, family-oriented, religious. They like art and music, and clean, clean, clean. Oh, we used to go through villages after they were, bombed and shelled, and we'd be still going through the village or town, and they'd come out with their shovels and brooms and start sweeping off their steps and porches and stuff like that. We were still there.
So it wasn't all bad.
No. And the Germans treated us well. The SS were nutheads. And most of the people, the German people, hated the SS. Because at first, during the Depression, of course, most of them liked Hitler because the Germans were in terrible straits during the 20s. Of course, the Treaty of Versailles sowed the seeds of World War II. In fact, the President, Woodrow Wilson, didn't even want to sign it, but the French and English forced him to. And of course, the Rhineland was taken away from Germany. The Sudetenland was taken away from Germany. And there were 11 or 12 million Germans displaced. And so the Germans were terrible during the 20s. A lot of us told us what they went through. They didn't have anything to eat. They didn't have any money. Then Hitler started to get the factories going. He started to build the autobahns and got the schools back in order. And then when he took back the Rhineland and Sudetenland, France and England didn't say a word because those belonged to Germany anyways. But then Germany made the big mistake on September 1st, 1939, when he attacked Poland, and that started the World War in Europe. Yep, that was but Hitler, if he'd stayed on track and stopped, he would have been all right, but he just went off base. Yeah.
Let me ask you a real, shall we say, adult question, if that's a good way to put it. With all your experiences and what you've seen and done what would you suggest or tell some of the young fellas today with respect to joining the service?
Well,
has it been a good experience for you? Has it influenced your life?
I'd never fight another war again, but we should respect our troops that are in Afghanistan and in Iraq. We've got to support our troops. Amen. Pray for them.
Amen.
I mean, a lot of the poor people that were in the service during the Vietnam War they weren't recognized and honored like they should have been. My wife had 2 first cousins in Vietnam, and they came back and, but we should honor our troops and pray for them.
And support
I'm not
them.
saying that we should be over there, but we've got to support our troops. I don't care where they are.
Amen.
Yeah, so, but I hate to say this, I'm not saying this to be funny, but I forgot what general said it years ago, but war is hell.
Amen. Yeah, that's for damn sure.
But I was so glad that my father said, love your enemy, because it really paid off. Being friendly with and not stealing things from the soldiers and the civilians. It paid off, yeah.
I want to say thank you, Don.
Well, it's a long story.
Hey, it took a long time to get there, but you lived it.
A long story.
That's the best part about it.
You're a very nice fellow, too, with all the work that you've done.
No. It's these guys
being
out
with
here
all the
that are
veterans.
doing the work.
Oh, they're nice, too, with all their work.
To that point, I'd like to kind of wrap this up this way. 11 November, some calendars now call it Veterans Day. Us old-timers, that was Armistice Day. 11/11/11/11. The 11th minute of the 11th day of the 11th hour of the 11th month. Way back, they signed the armistice for the end of World War I. Hopefully that was to be the war to end all wars. History has proved it different. But part of that history is fellows like Don and the fellows you've seen before me now, doing what they thought was their job, little or no bravado. It's just something that had to be done. Again, I invite any and all of you guys and the gals who have served in any branch of the service to come forward, if you will. We're not trying to push anybody, but give you a chance, as we've done all the others, to relive some of those memories, hopefully the good memories. There's a lot of stuff you'll never talk about. I know that. I won't either. But we have to try to fill in those little blanks in history, because unless they are filled, there'll be holes, if you will, through the rest of our lives. The bad part is every day you pick up the newspapers, unfortunately it's a habit I got now, where you read about he or she was a veteran of such and such a war. Was means they're no longer with us. That part of the puzzle will never be filled. So again, however I can put it to you, please, if you have something to share with us and you'd like to share with us, get a hold of me. Bob Stevens here, television station. Call me at home, you'll get the address and the number. We'll get together, figure out the best time for you and for us, and we'll put the show on the road. Again, we thank you and hope that today you'll start thinking about 11 November. Take a few moments to reflect on what all these guys and gals have done over the years and how it's made possible for you to enjoy what you have. I saw a quib the other day in the Veterans magazine. It says, if you can read this, thank your teacher. If you can read it in English, thank your veterans. Peace. Thank you for watching.